Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Prague edition of the Tatiana Show. Today, I'm joined by the beautiful Alena Vránová, queen of crypto, Satoshka extraordinaire, and she's coming to us from Prague. Hello, Alena, how are you?
Hi, Tatiana. Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And of course, I'm joined by my co-host, but he had to go second because ladies first. Hey, Josh, how are you?
I'm very good. And you're right, ladies first, naturally.
Awesome. So we've got a great show planned for you guys. We wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with the Paralelni Polis conference, also known as the Hackers Congress out in Prague, which is just coming up this coming weekend. But then we were also going to maybe talk a little bit about the parallels because we're all European and what's going on with the United States and the incoming totalitarian regime that's going to crush all of our dreams and prevent us from having fun. But before we get to that delightful topic, why don't we start with the real main event? I was lucky enough to be invited to the Congress in, 2015 or something. Mm-hmm. And I went with Lynn Ulbricht. So she also gave a speech.
I remember that year. Yes.
Yeah, that was super cool. We had a great time. And this is, I think, one of the best conferences of the year. It's community-based. It's hacker-based. It has sort of a freedom ethos, a little bit of a rebel vibe, which we all know I like. But Alena, why don't you tell us what we can expect this year?
You can definitely expect the same quality of speakers and super exciting content. I've been lucky to be a part of the organizing team behind the talks, and I'm telling you that the topics are just mind-blowing. That for sure, as usual. Right now, 2020 is a crazy year, so we had to adapt. I think every crisis is good to learn and adapt in the situation. So we are basically expanding from on-site to online event. We are going to use a hop-in hosted event. I'm aware that some Bitcoiners are already used to do that. That's great. We are still counting on physical presence. It's going to be smaller. We are reshuffling the stages, so we will have one physical stage, one remote speaker stage, because a lot of speakers are just restricted to travel. And this year we will have a huge attention to everyone online, because we said, you know what? We don't allow the politicians to duck up our lives. We want to spread the information. It's super crucial that we talk about digital totality and totalitarian regimes and teach people how to prevent against that. And we will, do a lot of the content on HCPP.tv, where podcasters from around the world, including yourself, so thank you very much, will be co-hosting probably a 24-hour long from Friday to Sunday online streaming. So it's going to be multifaceted, one public streaming on the HCPP TV and 2 stages plus a workshop stage for the ticket buyers, for participants on the hop-in platform, plus physical presence for whoever want to come and can come. Please do. We will hang out.
Okay, so that's great. Yeah. I like that you guys have the free track so people can, get a little teaser, get a little bit of a snack size. But what if they want the full course meal? How much is it for tickets?
The ticket right now for online is €150, and you can get an amazing coupon for a discount of 50% when you type in Tatiana on the checkout. So please do that. Join us.
How good is that?
Because the hop-in, I pretty like it. I hope it's gonna work well. But the hop-in allows people to hang out and to network and to interact almost as if they were face to face. So I'm kind of excited. Please come and join the crowd. If you have questions, you can raise hand and ask the speakers right away.
Guys, I just want to step back a bit and let the viewers know how important this conference is. I think this is one of the most important conferences in the world. It's up there with the Chaos Computer Club conferences, who really start to look into freedom of online access, and not only access, the tracking, the totalitarianism that's happening, the digital totalitarianism, and how to deal with that. And you guys have been at the forefront of this for a long time. And I'm just really, I take my hat off to every one of you guys that are organizing this, but also the speakers. And it's always been very, very fascinating watching this stuff. So folks, don't miss this. This is really, really important information as we head, especially now with COVID. They're going nuts with all the tracking apps and contact tracing and everything. This is all being used as an excuse to really crack down on your individual freedoms. And these guys talk about how we can get around that, the protocols that are being built, the network of the networks that are being built to get around all of this nonsense.
Yes, precisely. And we also want to add this workshop layer this year where people can actually acquire practical skills on protecting their own computers and phones, securing their emails and data online, using decentralized chat, and then, building up towards decentralized money. So Bitcoin one-on-one, how to use Bitcoin wallet, how to use a hardware wallet, how to create a multi-sig, then how to start with Lightning, how to set up a node. So each course is curated and designed so it layers or adds new layers of defense to the individual freedom. So when you go through all of that, you will have like a basic overview. Okay, this is what I need to set up, or this is how I do. We are trying to really curate it for anyone to join in, even without prior knowledge, or with just having watched the previous workshops, that you should be able to basically do everything in the end, be more a sovereign individual and more free and more secure in the online world. So it's a progress, it's a step by step. We are hoping to add some first stepping stones for the people as well. So not just talks, but practical skills as well.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to attract new people, not just Bitcoiners, because Bitcoiners, they should know it. They should all do it, right? But I'm hoping that new people will join in and will derive like practical skills as well from this.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a newbie and you're interested in this, you can, of course, go online. Now, I know that you guys have 59 hours and maybe even more of nonstop live streaming. So unless somebody's really, super into it, I think that's going to be a little bit much for people to absorb in one sitting. So number one, they could probably play it back later, right? It's not just a live stream.
Yes.
And then also they can get the little Bitcoin book, which you and Jimmy Song worked on. So just a little plug for that. If anybody is, more into books, they can check it out. That's a really good gift for Christmas. Oh, look at that. Very nice.
Yes, it's here. Thank you for reminding me of this. This was like a little project of last year, but it's going really well. We already translated the book into probably 7 or 8 languages, and some of them are published for free, like Punjabi, Mandarin, Arabic, all these like territories where we feel a huge need for education. We just released it for free. Much more languages coming up, Swedish included, Russian, and so on. So thank you for plugging that in. Anyway, let's talk about the totalitarian regimes and what we have in common there and what we can bring, because I feel the three of us are a unique combo of backgrounds from the European history, and with that it may be valuable. So
yeah, absolutely.
For bridging that.
So yeah, just to kind of preface the conversation, my mom, for the people who are not, familiar, my mom is from Warsaw. So I would go to Poland every single summer. And I remember I went up to my mom because I was very interested in saving the world. And I said, Mom, why don't we put all of our money into a pile and then everybody can work and then you could take out what you need. And she's like, Tanya, that's communism and it doesn't work. So I had to go back to the drawing board. I've always had a very big interest in this. Now, I know that Josh has done a ton of research on World War II, and your knowledge of the history there is probably more in depth than mine for sure. However, just to say, I was always warned about what happened with World War II, and I have this sickening feeling as I watch what's going on in the United States and frankly around the world that these are great covers in order to bring in this kind of an overlord kind of status, much worse than previously. It's like our freedoms are being destroyed. So I think it's important that we provide some historical context I'd love to open up the floor to either of you to kind of speak a little bit about your experiences, what your family went through. I know that my mom's boyfriend, for example, after the war was done, his father was marched out into the field and he was shot anyway. And he was a Polish guy. The Russians actually killed a lot of people after the war. There was a lot of violence. So it's not like World War II ended when World War II ended. But everything leading up to it, I think, was quite significant. And unfortunately, we see hints of it going on right now. So do either of you want to open up that conversation?
Maybe if I may, Josh. So there was an overt violence during the World War happening, right? But the other form of violence that was happening was censorship and propaganda. And that was the same across any totalitarian regime, be it the fascism or the communism, which is basically, I would even say basically the same with the nuances, except for fascism is national socialism and I would say, and communism is an international socialism, right? So, but they are collectivists, and the propaganda is a very strong component of it. Well, as we transition to digital world, it's way more easier and scalable and cheaper to do massive propaganda. First of all, to inject different ideas and to let them grow. And so I think that's pretty helpful, and whoever is into geopolitics should read up a little bit on the strategies of subversion. So I don't want to go into there, but in general, this is a strong machinery. So we want to fight against the censorship. And the name of the entire Paralelni Polis actually comes from the dissidents of the communist regime in Czechoslovakia, namely from Václav Benda, who in 1978 published a short tractate on when you cannot, basically saying when you cannot live under these conditions and you cannot fight the system and change it, and you cannot escape it either, right? Because there was no escape. There's nowhere to go. Then you have to build your parallel world, parallel society with your parallel education, your parallel monetary system, your parallel, all the networks just independent. And that was a great idea. And that was basically the source of the naming of Parallel Polis or Paralelni Polis. It's a tongue breaker even in Czech. Don't worry if you can pronounce it, just call it PP. That's easier. Yes, basically, this is what inspires people around Polis to do this kind of activity. And I think it's really important to understand that the situation we're in now is probably even way worse for us on one hand, because as I said, it's much cheaper for them to surveil, to influence, to subvert, to control your monetary flows. Because in the 70s, people used cash. Today, they can easily stop your transactions. They can easily impose capital controls. They can limit bank withdrawals when it comes to hyperinflation. And that is something that is coming, in my opinion. It's impossible to avoid under current economic situation. But at the same time, we have much better tools to protect ourselves and to fight against. And that's all what Hackers Congress is about, to provide people the knowledge and the tools to fight back, or not to fight back, to find their own way in the world.
Yeah, it's so important right now. And as a person that didn't have a tech background, but I did have an interest in sort of building a non-dystopian future, anything but like the dystopian nightmares of all those novels that I read.
Yes.
This is a critical tool. So even though you might be a little bit averse to security or learning about that stuff, don't let that prevent you from learning, because you have to proceed at your own risk. Of course, this is why we Bitcoin, right? It is a truly the people's money. And if you look at 1913, when they invented the, they had the creature from Jekyll Island created with the invention of the Federal Reserve, that really opened up the floodgates for a whole century of war. And that's one of the main interests that I have with Bitcoin is I'm very strongly anti-war. And if you don't control the money, you don't control anything. So in addition to taking some time to learn, I hope our listeners are going to pick up at least a little bit of Bitcoin as a, something to prevent them from being totally screwed over. I mean, Josh, maybe you could give us a little bit of background about Germany. What happened with the Weimar Republic, I think it was, where they were just lighting wheelbarrows full of cash around for, firewood and stuff. And also, here in the United States, we have a lot of people walking around with masks. And I have a park across the street from me. So they're always wearing a mask in the park when they're completely alone. Now, if you believe that a mask is there to help you, that's fine. But you don't need it if you're running completely away from people. And the lack of sense, to me, is particularly terrifying because there is no sense. And when people think, oh, World War II, the Nazis, they're so bad. Oh, it can never happen here. BS, because look at it. These people are like Muppets and they're just wearing masks no matter what. The fear is very strong. Maybe you can give us a historical context for that, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long stretch. A lot of people think is saying, oh, if you're forcing people to wear masks, that's like Nazi Germany. But and it's not yet. It's about using fear to do what you want. And let's take it back for a second about the Weimar Republic, where Germany had a hyperinflation to pay off the debts of World War I, and that caused World War II as well to but really, if I'd like to go even further forward, because I think where it really started to see scientific control is after World War II, when East Berlin was separated from West Berlin, and you had in the East Berlin, you had the police state, which was the Stasi, was the police structure where everybody was paid and employed to tell on each other. And there's a great film called The Lives of Others. If you haven't seen it, definitely do yourself a favor. It just sort of, it's a great one, right? And it sort of is a drop in the bucket to let you quickly understand what that was all about. Now, this was an era where everything was still paper, pen, typewriters. They had folders and folders of drawers. In fact, the funny thing is, it's quite ironic. The studio that I'm in right now, or the office, used to be the headquarters of the Stasi in the West. They had a secret headquarters that had their own rubbish takeaway. We found when we took this building over, microphones in the walls and thick doors. We had there was all these big shredders down below. The doors are like thick, weird hidden rooms. It was strange. So it's kind of ironic, that side of things. But what we now have is next level. A lot of people were very scared of the entire Stasi thing because it was, if you've ever read 1984, it's very much on the same lines where everyone's telling on each other. You can't really talk to your neighbor because your neighbor might be just dobbing you in. And if the neighbor needs food or money, they might just make something up about you. Or if they don't like you because you've got a certain skin color, they might also just say, bring the police. Hey, I saw that person, listening to a certain radio station, or I heard that person listening to a certain radio station, which is not allowed. And of course, the police would then come and arrest that person, interrogate them, and the rest of it.
And it's, by the way, in Germany, it's happening right now. There's a Stasi-like approach to Airbnb owners. So there's a line for people to snitch on neighbors if they suspect that they're renting their own property on Airbnb and maybe not paying taxes. you can snitch. They try to have these snitching servers for the citizens of Czech Republic when the Corona broke out. They wanted people to snitch on their friends and neighbors, sending like to the ministry or whoever pictures or like announcements, right? And people just flooded that server with obscene pictures of their crotches. So,
Nice.
so they went
Very
on TV and said we had to cancel the service because people were just obscene, which made me really happy, by the way, for Czech nation in a way, and proud, because it feels like, and I don't want to be predictive, but it feels like that the memory of the totalitarian regime is still quite fresh, and that people are not interested to be told too much what they should do or not to do, or that it feels as there's certain limits that they do not tolerate anymore after.
Yeah. No, and this is very, very, you hit the nail on the head. The thing is that eventually AI will filter out all that stuff. So the AI will just look for images that aren't, anything to do with anything, and just ditch it. Skin color, I'd get rid of it. But yeah, I mean, what you said there, Alena, is really, really spot on. It's the people deciding that this isn't on and rebelling against it. The thing is, countries like Australia, white people in Australia really haven't seen a very bad side of the state as such. The Aboriginals, of course, have. They've seen terrible, terrible atrocities against them. But white Australia hasn't. America hasn't really seen anything terrible. And so
in the recent past, at least. So it's not in a fresh memory of the nation.
Yeah, spot on. And I think that makes a difference. And I'm actually more scared of countries like that haven't got a recent history of it, because it's orders of magnitude easier to pull off this nonsense nowadays with the digital totalitarianism.
Yeah. And the nation that is so much internet connected and so much consuming the internet space, or they are investing so much time in the online space, so much more susceptible to all this. The information spreads much faster in American society than, for example, in Russia. Right? In Russia, yes, in certain pockets, but not as much as in the US. But Tatiana, what you told about the masks, the parallel, I would probably also not see the parallel right there. But similarly, I was thinking, and I just had a conversation with some friend on Twitter today about a potential parallel between the yellow star, the David Star, and potentially chipping people. So if governments really conclude that they will be chipping people and vaccinating people, or chip in a vaccination type of situation, then we could arrive at the same scenario. So there will be a first grade and second grade citizens, except for it would be inverse. So whoever doesn't have that chip would not be allowed to travel, and that's, let's not think that this is not going to happen or that it's impossible in our modern society. Unfortunately, it is. We see how people just go and obey in many places. How, in my opinion, some governments grab too much power and go too ahead of time because of fear. They impose drastic measures without thinking. There was several stories in here when the COVID outbroke, so which made you think like, why? Why? Immediate state of emergency, or how do you call it? Is it state of emergency in English?
Yeah.
And such state allows you to basically do whatever.
Yeah. And the thing is that, so I guess I wasn't drawing it completely the parallel in terms of saying
but
it's the star, but it's similar. I guess what I'm more concerned about is just the blind obedience and all the people ratting on each other. I have a friend in London, and she was saying that now in the UK, you can't have a gathering of more than 6 people. And again, I mean, tuberculosis killed more people. This is completely, to me, preposterous. The whole entire thing, it's an excuse in order to usher in essentially a new world order. There's a lot of very scary things. And then in the United States, we're also talking a lot about socialism. And a lot of people don't understand that, they don't tell you that socialism or communism is going to be standing on a line for bread for 4 hours. They tell you, oh, it's for the people. We need universal health care. We need to protect everybody. We need welfare. And they've also implemented a censorship where people are self-censoring out of fear of being called a racist. So it takes people's natural inclination to be nice and pleasant and it uses it against them,
Mhm.
because a lot of people may have similar views to what we're talking about, but they're afraid to talk about it. And that self-censorship, I think, is absolutely terrifying. And again, reminder, just because they say it's going to be wonderful, they're not going to tell you it's going to be hell on earth. Obviously not. So
Mhm.
it's very, very frightening to see people kind of going along with it. Incidentally, it's destroying families. My sister-in-law is very paranoid, and she has not let me see my niece and nephew since February.
Oh.
February. My mom had 3 negative COVID tests, and she won't even let them be seen. And not to even talk about how kind of the masks are not necessarily even protecting anybody. I
Mm.
see the masks as a way of muzzling people. Throughout history. People are forced to wear masks in order to basically show a slave class. And if you implement that on children, how do they grow up? How do they develop if they're not even able to read your facial signals? We already have enough problems with millennials not being
Mm.
able to form normal romantic relationships. Imagine what a world will look like 20 years from now if we keep this up.
Yeah. Well, the separation is one of the like divide et impera, right? The more you divide the society, the better you can influence small pockets of people, right? I started to read. I haven't finished yet, but I already can recommend the book Madness of Crowds. Um, I'm terrible with names of authors and everything, but please check it out. Madness of Crowds. This author is beautifully describing how the socialists were using the division of the working class from the ruling class as the struggle. And unfortunately, that division failed. It turned out that applied socialism and communism is just leading to misery in basically all of the long-term communist regimes. It led to a failing state and failed economy. So now they're refurbishing and reinventing the wheel, basically, and finding new division between people. And the way to divide is now based, before it was like working class and ruling, and now it's men and women and white, yellow, brown, blue, any kind of new sexuality. So we don't have men and women anymore. We kind of have all these new sexist genders and so on. So that is also the field for them to divide the society, to create a lot of sensitivity, the political correctness that has been pampered in the US, especially for decades, is how do you made everyone more sensitive to even like small differences. And so I think that kind of was a very long-term prep that the Marxists have been doing through academia and through social media and everywhere.
It's
Absolutely.
really, it's really interesting, isn't it? They say everyone has to be equal. Like you have to have an equal sitting for everyone, every different gender, everything. But let's point out all the different genders. So it's like, hang on, if everyone's equal, we shouldn't have to even point them out. What's the point? We and the obsessiveness with being offended at every little thing is ludicrous.
Yeah.
And I often say to people, look, be proud that you can be offended, because if you can be offended, it means you're still free, sort of. It's one of the signals to say, hey, I'm free because I've just got offended by something. Great. Someone is free enough to offend me.
I want to ask you guys a question. So, we have things like the Hackers Congress. We have all of our activism that each of us are doing. But I find myself being very frustrated with the censorship that's going on online. And I'm not sure that some of these companies are going to be able to thrive quickly enough in order to offer a full alternative to Facebook, to Twitter. I was on Twitter the other day, and there was a full on porno on my Twitter feed. And I don't really want to see that. I've never clicked on one of those sites, so I don't know why Twitter is showing that to me. But what I find particularly infuriating about it is that there's so much political censorship. So if you say something against COVID, they're going to slam you down within seconds. But somehow this kind of stuff is available, even though children are surfing on Twitter. And frankly, if I had a kid, I wouldn't want them seeing, penetration. I mean, or any of that. Frankly, that should be my prerogative. So what do we do? I mean, are we going to have a violent revolution? Because I'm not really that sporty, and I'm like, not really a good shot
You
yet.
gotta lift the weights, Tatiana. Start.
Oh, I have the weights. The weights. Look at that.
You have a gun?
Look at that. That's a big muscle, right? I feel like it's decent. I do have a gun, but it was lost tragically in a boating accident. I was so depressed. I was like, no. And I had my Bitcoins in there too. It's awful. But aside, I don't want to relive that traumatic incident. What do you guys think is a solution? Should we all be in despair? Do I need to move to Poland? People in my area, New Jersey and New York, we're all thinking of moving out of here because, you've got a lot of rioting in the streets. The cops aren't even doing anything. Normally, I'm on the, anti-police side, but I also don't want to see absolutely lawlessness in the streets. And I don't want to see people beating anybody up with a brick in the back of the head. Violence against police, I also don't condone by any means. So what's our solution here? Besides going to the Hackers Congress, make sure you get your tickets, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly comment on that. I think it's for me, this is why Bitcoin was so beautiful. It's because it's a revolution without violence. It's just stepping out of that system. It's like if you don't like the mass killing of animals, you become vegetarian. You just step out of it. You go, right, I'm vegan now. I'm not going to touch that stuff. I'm out. And it's one little step out. So Bitcoin to me was that. And I think if you can step out from mass networks, you can do little things like use decentralized video sharing apps or as decentralized as possible, or support projects that you think are helping towards the freedom of information, the unlocking, use free and open source software. I know we're using Zoom right now, but we should be using Jitsi, because these are the things that help us move out. And funnily enough, friends that are quote unquote socialists are actually on the same page a lot of the time, because they're coming from the right place. They want a better world, but so a lot of the time we can find equilibrium as well to say, hey, look, free and open source software that can be shared with anybody and give people the tools to stay free and individual, because a lot of these people, they do like their individual freedom. And that's what you want to do. That's how you step away. And that's why this Hackers Conference is so important, because it gives you the tools to do that, to exit without violence, without pumping the iron, ready for the big revolution.
You should be pumping iron anyway. It keeps away the COVID. Alena, what's your suggestion? Any ideas over there?
So there's two scenarios. If this is going to turn out really violent, and I hope not, then there may be an opportunity for a bigger change, like a more radical change in the society. This is going to happen in small pockets and not really erupt, which, we will see. Then I still see a more of a gradual onboarding onto these technologies, and people, depending on the level of pressure in their local environment, will be adapting and looking for new solutions. And people will be having to find those solutions when they're pressured. Here in March, when there was the outbreak and lockdown, our Minister of Finance, Prime Minister Babiš, made wearing masks mandatory, but at the same time, he basically confiscated all the production of private companies towards the state. And people were like, okay, if we are supposed to wear masks, but we cannot buy masks anywhere, what do we do? And so people found a solution in just going home. Our grandmas and moms, they took out the old sewing machine and they just crafted masks and hung them on all over the villages. There were like mask trees. You would see like 20, 30 masks hanging, and you could go and just pick one and take it. So people are, this is a decentralized solution to a centrally evoked problem. So despite politicians, we can find solutions, and it will be maybe in smaller pockets and for specific needs. So I'm not expecting like all of a sudden massive boom in decentralized apps and everything, from a month to a month. But maybe rather gradual, and it's a long run. And we need to educate and be patient with people and start with the basics. That's why we're introducing these workshops with basics, because it's needed. Yeah. And what do you think, Josh?
In Victoria, they did a similar thing because they weren't allowed to protest. And I feel that protest is one of the, even though doesn't really work because no one really listens in power, but it's a basic right to see a body count of like, hey, all these people don't like this X thing. And Victorians weren't allowed to protest. So they just put out boots. Everyone in front of their house or on their fence stuck boots to say, give him the boot, give Andrews the boot, who's the nice. Premier of Victoria. And it was a kind of a show of hands or show of boots, really, of who was thinking this way. And I really like that.
However, Josh, when these people are divided into the first grade and second grade citizens, the scenario shifts completely. Look at China and their social crediting system. They are already imprisoned in their own country, just through, not officially, but not being able to purchase anything, not being able to travel. And those tactics were used by the communists, by German Stasi, by KGB in Russia, by STB in my country. Those are the same. And as you mentioned, like you never knew who's snitching on you. It was so deeply engraved that people were not doing it for money. They were doing it out of fear of losing their families, out of fear of not being able to visit their families, for example. And if we get to a point where we were like really divided like this and can be tracked and traced, I'm afraid that there will be some idiots, as they always are, to grab the power and misuse it. Right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Everybody needs a lesson in anarchy, or at least in freedom and liberty.
I hope it will be a theoretical lessons for Americans. Please read a book on history of Europe of the 20th century and do not repeat our mistakes. I beg you.
I know. It's so scary to be here in the United States. And right now my passport is being renewed, so I can't even escape. It's basically my nightmare. I'm applying for my European citizenship as well. I guess we're coming up on the end of the show. So I wanted to give you guys a chance for some final words, but something that we didn't talk about with the Congress is just some of the speakers. Like, did you want to just run down a quick list of some of the speakers that people can anticipate before we sign off?
Yes, please go to hcpp.cz. I will open myself. hcpp.cz. We are still working a little bit on the schedules and stuff that will be published soon. But you'll see, like, some of my favorites and all-stars that usually come up on stage are Paul Rosenberg, who founded Crypto Hippie and is like one of the, actual free crypto anarchists out there, or cypherpunks, Smuggler and Frank Brown. But I'm looking forward to the talk of Chad and Nadia, the first seasteaders. I'm looking totally to Douglas Rushkov's talk. Please check out all the bios and the abstracts on the website, because I don't want to just mention a few, and there's just like a huge lineup of amazing speakers, plus workshop lectures, of course.
Right.
Yeah, and it's so worth it. In Hopin, you can basically do chat roulette as well, where you sort of click on it and you get a random person, and you start to talk, and then you go. But it's really, really cool.
Yes.
And you can jump in and even start your own workshops if you've got a workshop on or something. And I also want to say, guys, if there's, Bitcoin is an open protocol, but not only Bitcoin. We have different networks like BitMessage and these different protocols for all sorts of things, and messaging apps and peer-to-peer mesh networks. If you're working on something like this, make sure you contact the people there and see if you can do a workshop on what you're working on to bring liberty forward and freedom forward, because it's really important. And this is what I find beautiful. Some kid in Myanmar can be sitting there hacking away and building something cool, really great for the Lightning Network. That's something that he couldn't do, or she, on the Visa network.
Cool.
True.
Yeah. Well, hopefully everybody's going to be tuning in. I've, been terrified this whole entire year. So I'm glad to see that you guys are putting this together, and that hopefully some people will be able to see each other in person. And then maybe next year, I don't know what's going to happen, because I'm not taking their vaccine. No, thanks. I'm not really a religious person per se, but I don't know. It sounds like some Mark of the Beast stuff. I'm not really into that. I'm just saying, sorry, devil, not today. So hopefully we're going to see some kind of changes. We've also got some upcoming episodes on the Tatiana Show. One I'm really excited about with Lieutenant Diane Goldstein. And she's from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. That was their former name. Now it's called Law Enforcement Action Partnership. And what they're doing is they're trying to basically go out to law enforcement and solve some of the problems that are going on, right? It's really wild out in the streets right now, but I don't think that having a civil war is going to be particularly helpful. So I like seeing, more nuanced approach and a little bit of a different look as to what's happening. So hopefully people can check that out. But before we go, anything else you guys want to talk about? I'm going to be including links to all this stuff. And you guys can use my coupon code Tatiana, and you can go to the Hackers Congress website. One more time, what's that website, Alena?
It's hcpp.cz.
Okay.
I hope to
CZ
see
is
you all
Z for people
online.
in America.
CZ? Okay.
We call it Z, but not in all places. So that's okay. And also, guys, I really encourage everybody always to buy Bitcoin. But Josh is from Vaultoro. And if you're a person that's a little bit nervous about Bitcoin, Vaultoro has been around for a really long time. So you can go gold and Bitcoin, and you can switch in between them. So if there's a bull run with Bitcoin, then you could take advantage of that instantly. And if you want to be a little bit more conservative, but stay in a really high performing, currency, I guess, I don't know, commodity, I don't know what you would call gold. But anyway, thumbs up for gold, go to Vaultoro. We've got a link to that too in the show notes as well.
Yeah, and if you click on that link, you get, if you trade over 500 euros worth of anything, you get a half a gram of gold for free. And Tatiana also gets a half a gram of gold. So
yes,
you can
so you
support the show.
Support the show, guys. I like that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alena Vránová. Please check her out online. She's everywhere. She's the Satoshka. And check out the little Bitcoin book. It makes a really good gift. I know everybody's trying to learn about crypto. It's a little bit tricky. And thanks everybody for checking out the Tatiana Show. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Peace
Thanks,
out.
What's the point of all this technology without a little love in our lives? Our hosts, Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz, have come together to bring you Proof of Love. Go to proofoflovecast.com. The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond. Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. We gotta think and reflect and use lots of intellect with our hearts when we work together. I know that it can be so hard out there, looking all around and saying that life ain't fair. So that is why we will fight and stay up late at night, listening to the Tatiana Show. Thank you for listening to The Tatiana Show. Please follow us on Twitter at Queen Tatiana or on Facebook and Instagram at Tatiana Moroz Music. More episodes can be found at thetatianashow.com, and make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. You are listening to The Tatiana Show. This show may contain adult content, language, and humor and is intended for mature audiences. If that's not you, please stop listening. Nothing you hear on The Tatiana Show is intended as financial advice, legal advice, or really anything other than entertainment. Take everything you hear with a grain of salt. Oh, and if you're listening to us on an affiliate network, the ideas and views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the network that you're listening on or of any sponsors or any affiliate products you may hear about on this show.